We were discussing at the end of the last video about the error feature. So if I accidentally typed in a subtraction sign instead of the negative it's supposed to be, the calculator gives you an error. But the cool thing I was telling you about is not only does it give you an error, if you hit clear, it highlights the error and tells you, hey, you did that wrong. So you go, oh, I accidentally typed in subtraction. So you go to the bottom of the keypad and click the negative instead. And so then the negative covers up the subtraction. Now you hit enter, boom. Is that so awesome? I love this calculator. For $13.50, it's the best on the market. I mean, that's super cool to tell you the error. Because lots of times students just sit and bang on clear and type it again, when lots of times you don't even need to type it again. You can just type right over what you did. So that gave me negative 2 1/4. Since they match, we can go back and say, yes, I got this one right, positively, because I just checked it. So anytime you have extra time on a test and there's solve problems on it, definitely go back and check. Okay, so our next, I think 3 or 4 problems have fractions in them. To clear fractions, they teach you in Math 091 that you multiply both sides, or I like to say every term, better than both sides. So every term of the equation by the least common denominator. So I just pick a number all the denominators go into, and then I multiply every single term by it. Fractions, non-fractions, decimals, every single term gets multiplied. So look at my denominators, 2, 10, 5. So first thing I'm going to do is write this bigger so that you can, and I would recommend this on a test too. Well, actually, if you're taking an electronic test, you have to rewrite the problem. But just big so that you can do your multiplication and cancellation without it all being scrunched in there. So LCD, least common denominator, what do 2, 10, and 5 all go into together? So I always tell students, always start with the biggest number and say, is 10 the LCD? Does 2 go into 10? Yes. Does 5 go into 10? Yes. So there's my LCD. So LCD is 10. So multiply every single term by 10. So I'm going to put a 10 there. So that takes care of this term. I'm going to put a 10 there. I'm going to put a 10 here, and I'm going to put a 10 here. The important thing is do not skip one single term. You skip one and your whole problem's wrong. So pick a number all the denominators go into, and it doesn't have to be the smallest one, but any number. I could have picked 20, 30, 40, but 10 is the least common denominator. And next, you can either use a calculator, use your head, use common sense, whatever works best for you. So this is a negative times a positive, so I know my next sign is going to be negative. And you can think of it as 10 times 1, 10, divided by 2, which is 5, and then the y. Or you can say, what's half of 10? Half of 10 is 5. Bring down the negative, bring down the y. Plus 40 equals, and here the 10s conveniently just cancel. 10 divided by 10 is 1, so then I don't have to do any multiplication or anything. So 10 over 10 is 1. So I'm left with negative 1y. And then here I say this is 20 divided by 5, which is 4. And some people have told me in the past, I'm really terrible with fractions. Can you help me on the calculator with that? So it's easy to do on the calculator. All you have to do is 2 fraction bar 5 times 10. And it would give you the same answer. But I would practice doing some of that in your head, because in the next class, 150, which is what most of you are getting ready for, probably about 95%, they have tests with no calculators. Like some teachers have 3 or 4 of them. So they expect you to be able to do stuff like this without a calculator. So I wouldn't become so reliant on this that you can't function without it. So the logarithm test usually doesn't have a calculator. The radical test usually has a piece of it that doesn't have a calculator. They usually do 2 tests, like they'll hand out the no calculator test first, have you finish it, then when you bring it up, then they'll give you the calculator test. So just FYI, because I've taught 150, 151 many times, so I'd have a good idea of what's coming up next. Okay, so here's our new equation. What do you notice about it? Boom, no fractions. How amazing is that? There is not a single fraction left in it. So this method is awesome. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so we are ready. So now we got rid of fractions. That's step 1 above. There's no like terms. So we're on to step 2, which says move all your variables to the left. So anytime I cross the equal, I have to do the opposite. So this is going to be plus 1y, because I need to bring all my letters to the left. And I do that. Anytime I'm crossing the equal sign, I have to do the opposite. So negative 4y plus 40 equals negative 1y plus 1y is 0, 4. Step 3 above, if you look up above at your table, says, or at the box says, move anything without an x or a y. This is called a constant to the right. So again, I'm crossing the equal sign. So anytime you cross the equal sign, you have to do the opposite. If I subtract 40 on the left, then I also have to subtract 40 on the right. So 40 minus 40 is 0. That's the whole reason we do the opposite, is to get that to cancel. And I'm left with negative 4y equals 4 minus 40 is negative 36. And then remember, step 4 above says do the opposite. Well, the opposite of multiplication is division. So instead of multiplying by negative 4, I'm going to be dividing by negative 4. And I get y equals positive. 2 negatives is always a positive. Positive 9. And I want to show you one fraction one to check, because I don't want you to think, oh, it's a fraction. I'm not going to bother checking it. It'll be too hard, because fractions are no harder to check. And the reason? Because you're using your calculator. So I take the original equation, and everywhere I see a y, I'm going to put 9. So negative 1/2 times 9 plus 4. And I want to know, does that give me the same thing as negative 1/10 times 9 plus 2/5? So I have it all written out. So now my only work is to type it in the calculator. So it's all written out here. So if this side gives me the same number as this side, then I can go up and box that and go, yes, I got that one right too. Okay, so let's practice typing it in. So negative, which would be at the bottom, not this. Remember, this is subtraction. Negative 1 fraction bar 2 times 9 plus 4. So once you get to the equal sign, hit enter and write that number down. So negative 1/2. Okay, now go to the other side. Negative 1/10. So hit clear. Your negative's at the bottom below 3. Negative 1 fraction bar 10 times 9 plus 2 fraction bar 5. Hit enter. Yes! Our two sides match, so now we can do our happy dance. Woohoo! And we can walk away and know we got that big problem correct. So like I said, if these don't match, that's your hint you made a mistake. So go back and find it. The mistake could be here in writing it, or it could be in solving it. Usually it's just something small like a sign error. But when you're taking a computer test, it's right or wrong. So you make a sign error and you just lost all the points. So you definitely, if you have extra time, want to go back and check on these. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to page 2. So let's do one more fraction one together, and then there's 3 fraction ones that you can practice on. So I'm going to have you stop the video and practice on some on your own. So let's do one more first, just to make sure you got the hang of it, and then you can work on these 3. Okay, so step 1, clear parentheses. There aren't any clear fractions. Yep, there are some. So I always take the biggest number and ask first, does everything go into 5? No. So then I double 5. 5 times 2 is 10. Does everything go into 10? No. 5 times 3 is 15. Does everything go into 15? No. 5 times 4 is 20. Ding, ding, ding. Yes, yes, and yes. So does everybody agree the LCD is 20? Because all 3 of those go into 20. So now I'm going to write it larger so that I can put my 20 in. So beside every single term, I need to put 20. And then I can either use my calculator or use my head. So 20 times 20 times 20. So then we get 60 divided by 4. So if you can't do that in your head, just type it in the calculator. So 20, excuse me, times, oh, sorry, too much talking, 3 fraction bar 4. And you can see that's 15. So the first term is now 15. Fraction is gone. This one we can do. 40, 2 times 20 is 40, divided by 5 is 8. So minus 8x. And you could also do 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 24, and then you have minus 8x as well. Equals 20 divided by 2, which is 10. So look at that sweet little problem we have. Almost done, and there's no fractions. Awesome. Okay, so we want everything with an x to the left. Does everybody agree that's already done? All x's are on the left. Step 3 is anything without an x goes right. So I look at the sign in front of it. It's a positive 15. So I need to do the opposite, minus 15 and minus 15. And again, I do the opposite anytime I'm crossing the equal, and I'm bringing it from the left side to the right side. So yes, it needs to do the opposite. So then we have negative 8x equals 10 minus 15 is negative 5. Okay, now what? Haven't quite gotten x alone. So the opposite of times negative 8 is divide by negative 8. And I will tell you, so many students make a mistake here. 2 negatives in division is always a positive. Never leave 2 negatives in a fraction. So my answer is positive 5/8.